Reddit stories. If you were a mad scientist with absolutely no moral or ethical dilemmas that might trouble you, what would be an experiment you'd like to conduct to better understand humanity? How many soft punches in the left leg would it take to kill someone? Breed humans for specific traits. I wonder how tall, small I can make a human, or a body part, nose, hands, feet, ears, before things start breaking. If I knew how things worked, maybe try adding new features in. Obviously I would have some mad scientist sons and daughters to continue my work. Weird artificial human evolution could take a while. I have 3 functional kidneys, so I always wondered if I mated with a man who also has this abnormality, would our kids also have 3? It seems genetic. My grandma also had 3. What if the kids were also mated with multi-kidney people? How many kidneys could a human body hold? Would my great-great-grandchildren have like 10 kidneys stuffed in there? Would that family become the go-to resource for kidney donations? Could we also breed their blood type so they were universal donors? Are there people out there with other duplicate organs? Could we use selective breeding to create lineages to provide other organs for those who need them? Crazy thinking. I would put all political parties into their own individual societies and government. It would be interesting to see what new ideas people come up with to hate each other in these closed systems. We could learn a tune about the human brain and how to fix it if we could just damage specific parts of it and see what goes wrong. I had meningitis as a 2-week-old child and then suffered 13 concussions in high school. I'm donating my brain to science when I die, so hopefully I can help some other poor fucker with this same shit I'm going through still years after. Kind of related, but Wilder Penfield was a neurosurgeon who mapped the brain by zapping portions of it during operations. He was able to remove a portion of the patient's skull while they were awake and electrocute the parts of the cortex. They would report back to him what they were experiencing while he was doing it. So for example, if he zapped a portion of the brain related to vision, the patient would report that they could no longer see. We are also able to learn a lot about the human brain through strokes. For example, strokes that occur in the left hemisphere will generally impact language and speech. Strokes that occur in the cerebellum will impact motor control and balance. What's cool is that when one portion of the brain is damaged, other healthy parts are able to compensate for the loss due to plasticity. This obviously wouldn't work for areas of the brain related to vision, hearing, etc. I had a temporary lobectomy surgery for my epilepsy. Before they cut, they tested the areas by basically poking around and watching what happened. They marked areas for leg, arm, face, etc. I was awake for part of it. They showed me pictures and I said, that is a blank. I remember they showed me a picture of a spoon and I said, that is I heard someone say, okay, not that spot. They ended up removing my left hippocampus and, unsurprisingly, my memory has taken a hit. It is odd because in addition my personality has had some changes too. How interesting. I feel like I would be scared just knowing that my brain is exposed and being prodded at lol. The hippocampus is responsible for memory and forming new ones, so yeah, like you said, Def, not surprising that that's taken a hit after your surgery. It makes sense that your personality changed as well because the hippocampus is part of the limbic system. What sort of personality changes have you experienced? I'm just curious. I am more outgoing than I used to be. I was a stereotypical introvert but am now pretty in the middle. I was really into model trains but not at all anymore. In fact, I'm totally into gardening and flowers in general. Before surgery a garden was a maybe someday thing. With the memory issues I am working on taking notes, making lists, and scheduling things. If someone introduces themselves, by the time I've replied with my name I've forgotten theirs. Recalling things in my head is difficult. I've even lost names of family members. Finally, I am way more emotional than ever before. Being a manly man, I had probably only ever cried once in my life, but now have bawled several times. It's like I'm still trying to learn how emotions work. And the surgery didn't work like we wanted it to. I have fewer seizures, but not as few as we were expecting. Kidnap politicians. Drug them into a highly suggestive state. Subject them to various scenarios. WW3, they become president, unlimited money and power at their fingertips, etc. And see which ones are truthful as to their aims, which are moral, and which are corrupt and evil. Televise the results. I will throw a kid into a jungle with only monkeys and only intervene in a time of need. I want to see how exactly the child will turn out and let them live in the jungle forever. I also want to see whether the level of intelligence will help the kid become leader one day. I believe psychologists tried to raise a monkey alongside their child to see if the monkey would learn to act more human. They called it off when their kid acted more monkey-like instead, so it's possible to return to monkey. Children raised by dogs have serious cognitive development problems such as inability to learn language. A human raised by primates would probably be closer to a primate than a human capable of functioning in modern civilization. Why is that? Our brains are more flexible than other animals. And shouldn't it be reversible? Nutshell. We can learn them. They cannot learn us. It's our flexibility, intelligence working against us. Put a social animal in a society of dogs and he becomes a dog to fit in. The dream. I don't know if this is a reference to something, but it's really funny. Put a newborn into an environment consisting of male and female adults. Parents, 2 older adults, grandparents, and a caregiver, babysitter, young adult, with occasional presence, interaction with others in a community setting. The difference between this and a normal world is that each person speaks a different language. Mom only speaks Italian, dad only Chinese, babysitter Farsi, etc. All of them understand all the languages used by others in the experiment, but they never speak in anything except their one assigned language. It's important that there be no bias, assignment, i.e. all women don't use a language in the same language group. The same goes for tall, short people, kindly, strict people, etc. Since there are approximately 200 sufficiently distinct languages, you can create 40 such groups in the community. Each person in a core group, parents, grands, babysitter, assists in coaxing, teaching the infant to speak, each using their personal language, i.e. the baby will be expected to learn 5 different words for spoon, food, etc. At about age 2.5, the children begin to interact with each other. Observe each one's preferences and how, when they teach other children, the words for things. As the children reach puberty, start reducing the number of adults so that by the time the kids are in their teens, it's just them with no outside influences. How does their splintered languages affect their social order? Do they develop a universal language? Etc. The slave trade created situations vaguely similar to this. Adult slaves were taken to the Caribbean from all over West Africa, all speaking different languages. As you'd expect, the adults learnt to communicate with each other and specific words were gradually adopted as the word used by everyone, but it was never a true language. What's fascinating is that the next generation, their children, would then turn this into a real language with grammar rules, like you always say subject, verb, object, in that order, and simple tenses for past, present and future etc. I was looking for this. My Haitian neighbor was explaining this to me and it was very interesting. For example, they used a made-up language but there is also French influence as the island was under French rule. They learned some French to be able to communicate with the French, and then eventually revolted, and the language today is a combination of all of that. I'm not Haitian so I could have some of it wrong but I thought it was neat. You are correct. You are referring to Haitian Creole. Source. I am Haitian. So you'll appreciate my childhood. My brother was 15 months younger than myself and I was around 2.5-3. We were exposed to heavily Irish accented English, Fijian Indian and Mum had a New Zealand accent. All whilst living rurally in Fiji. Well, rather than becoming bilinguals we simply chose the person we wanted to speak to the most and learned how to communicate. We chose each other as we had the most in common and set about speaking our own language. We could converse but our elders only knew a few words. We could both speak some English and Fijian but our language wasn't understandable to anyone. Worried about our development, our parents moved us back to Australia. We needed to attend speech therapy as our language omitted certain sounds and syllables. I couldn't pronounce yellow. I would try but blello would come out. That's insane. Thanks for sharing. Do you have any accent left? Can you remember your original language? I have an accent nobody can place usually, but if I'm around a few people speaking the same way it tends to fade a little. Unfortunately I don't remember the language and neither does my brother, but I believe my father recorded us speaking at some point on VHS tapes. The only word my parents knew was video and that was because we'd point at the TV. Like and subscribe for daily Reddit videos.